Hello kids, Daddy's here. Right now, Daddy will show you an American Southern Gothic film from 2017 titled The Beguiled. Be a good kid and subscribe to Daddy's channel. Spoilers ahead, watch out. This film begins with a young girl, Amy, who picks mushrooms in the woods to her basket. Suddenly, as she picks them up, she comes across and sees a wounded soldier. His name is Corporal John McBurney. He is asking her about any places he can go for a while. And Amy replies if he can stay at the Farnsworth School, and it is just on the other side of the woods. It is called the Miss Martha Farnsworth Seminary for young ladies. Then, she struggles to help him up and they start off slowly. Amy and John approach the gates when the class is in session. Amy calls Miss Martha, who the owner of the school. She calls her students and all of them are female. All the girls surround him as they lift his body and they start to make their way toward the porch. It shows if John is a Yankee and he fights for Northern. So, Miss Martha asks Amy to tie the blue rag on the gate, in order the patrol will know they have captured a live Yankee. Edwina suggests her to clean up his wound and wait until he's in shape to be taken away. Miss Martha and the others use all their strength to bring him inside to be treated. Miss Martha begins to clean up and treats his wound, helped by Edwina. A small group of Confederate soldiers march past the school's gate. They are battle-weary, in worn uniforms. Miss Martha opens the gate to greet them. The captain is asking them to take care because lots of Yankees got separated and they're roaming in the woods. She doesn't tell them about John and asks a few cartridges they could spare for her. And the captain and his group start off. As she opens a drawer and takes out a revolver, she loads a few cartridges into the gun and puts it back, just in case anything bad will happen. At night, Miss Martha, standing tall in her high collar, reads from the Bible and pray with her students. May the Lord will see fit to restore the health of Corporal John, pray for his return to health and for his early departure. The next day, Amy opens the door and peeks into Corporal John's room while he has awoken. He tells her that he loves to hear the sound of the birds around here. Amy replies if she can show him some nests she collected. He thinks it would give him great pleasure. Miss Martha goes over to check on his condition. John appreciated her kindness to help him, and she sets to work checking his bandages and anything. One thing, she must remind him that he is not their guest, but a most unwelcome visitor. They are supposed to don't treat him well. Edwina glides over to Corporal John's bedside, brings a soup and razor for him. They talk about current of war condition. In the middle of conversation, he gives her a compliment about her name, that he thinks it's a lovely name. For him, she is a beautiful woman he has ever seen so far. After that, she looks at him and turns and glides out. They do study like usual. Alicia interrupts and asks Miss Martha to allow her to the bathroom. Turns out, she goes into Corporal John's room without Miss Martha knowing. She kisses him and says good night before she goes away. And the lesson for this night, as dedicated Christians, Miss Martha asks her students in Corporal to join their evening prayer. Before they do, they have a little music to play and Jane begins playing the harpsichord. Suddenly, loud knocks hit the door and Miss Martha faces them up. In the meantime, the girls with Corporal until she comes back. Miss Martha steps aside and opens the door wider as two men enter the house. Afterward, she explains that they just offer their assistance before the army leaves this vicinity, but she hasn't as yet mentioned Corporal McBurney about this. So, she allows him to stay until he is recovered and then sends him on his way alone. When the girls sleep, Miss Martha and Corporal John have a drink together. They sip brandy in the warm glow of the fire and talk about themselves before the war. It concludes that Miss Martha used to be married. Meanwhile, John shouldn't have been there. He'd just come from Dublin, and he had nothing. He took $300 to take a man's place. Corporal John is starting to walk carefully with the help of a cane, as Amy by his side watches and helps him. Other girls seem jealous of her and insist to help him too. Then, Miss Martha lets them know whose work is needed, they should do it. As his thank for her kindness, he tries to help by working on her garden. At the same time, Edwina's flushed face as she works in the garden, she steals a glance at him. They stare at each other. He sits on a bench, as Miss Martha checks the wound under his bandages. She tells him that his leg is healed enough to leave by the end of this week. He offers himself to be her full-time gardener, but she refuses him. All the girls know about Miss Martha, who asked Corporal John to leave. One of the girls, Alicia, she thinks they have to make things so pleasant for him that he won't even consider leaving them until it's time for him to go. Edwina joins him by the window, alone in his room. He tells her about Miss Martha who wants him to leave. Meanwhile, he doesn't even want to leave her too. He falls in love with her and asks her to go with him. They have a special dinner for Corporal John. As you can see, he is surrounded by the ladies and girls. They are all dressed up in their best. Afterward, they decide to sleep. Edwina steps back as he jumps up. She backs up towards the stairs, but he reaches for her. She pushes him away as she drops the candle and screams. Miss Martha rushes out, followed by the other girls, all in nightgowns. The blood pooling around him, his leg contorted. She leans in to check his pulse and asks what happened with him. Alicia replies that Edwina came out and began fighting with him. The women gather around, blocking Corporal John, who is lying on the dining table. His leg is broken badly this time. Miss Martha can't repair it, so she has to amputate him or he will die. In the morning, suddenly, the silence is interrupted by Corporal John's horrified screams. It's the heaviest day for him, and he has to accept the fact that if one of his legs is gone. Edwina rushes and tries to get close to him, but he pushes her away. He says that Miss Martha is a madwoman, she is such a vengeful hoe-ad butcher. Alicia carefully makes her way over to John, who's resting on the settee. She sits beside him and says that she tried to ease Miss Martha's suspicions about them. He doesn't even care about that and grabs her hair and pulls her head back roughly. He forces her to grab the key so he can out. They gather on and talk about Corporal John as he comes to them with a gun in his hand. He is still angry about what happened to him. All the girls sit in shock. Then, Miss Martha asks Amy to go and do something. Amy is quickly tying the blue rag on the gate. When she has done, she turns back and sees Corporal John, who looks at him a beat and takes off running. He tries to grab her, but she gets away, and Miss Martha walks towards them to help Amy. He points his gun at Miss Martha and Amy, shooing them inside. He asks them about the meaning to tie the blue rag on the gate. They go back to the inside. For him, he would rather be dead than a man without a leg, hobbling around. And he starts to cry. He had enough with their devilment. He pulls the trigger and shoots the chandelier as a warning. All the girls scream. He watches as Edwina enters. She uses all her strength to push a sofa across the door as a barricade. She stares at him as she walks over. She leans down to him, bracing her arms on his, and kisses him with all her pent-up passion. Another side, Miss Martha has an idea after a quite long time think. She asks Amy to find mushrooms for Corporal John. She is going to make a special dinner for him. John and Edwina asleep in bed, her face resting against his chest. Meanwhile, Amy gets her chance to find poisonous mushrooms. And she finds it, and it's time for dinner. Miss Martha and the girls are ready as Corporal John comes in, followed by Edwina. She says she didn't mind what he did to her and she offers him mushrooms. After that, a bowl of mushrooms being passed over to him silently, from girl to girl, no one taking any. The bowl is handed to him. All eyes are on him. He starts to serve her some. He is enjoying it. All the girls look at each other. Suddenly, he starts to choke, realizing something is wrong. He collapses to the floor. Edwina falls to him. After all, the girls carry the body bag down the walkway towards the gate and drop it there. That's all for today, kids. Help Daddy by like and subscribe. See you on the next videos.